Of all the things The Last of Us executes with masterful flair, nothing quite compares to the beautiful, somber, visceral, and engaging story they managed to author during the Winter chapter. This chapter represents something of a seminal mark in Naughty Dog's history, where they managed to infuse the logic of play with a narrative they were trying to tell in ways they struggled with in Uncharted. With the more violent trappings of a post-apocalyptic United States, the experiment that Naughty Dog has conducted over 2 decades in trying to harmonize gameplay and story finally succeeded. It does this by letting the context and the characters' actions guide the story. What we get is something both harrowing to the core and beautiful in ways only our medium can pull off. The chapter starts with an abrupt shift. We have been playing as Joel the entire game, tasked with protecting Ellie, a spunky youth who seems to be invulnerable to a global pandemic that has devastated the world. The last chapter ended in an intense sequence, with us not clear as to whether Joel has survived. This transition in pacing is something no other studio mediates as well as Naughty Dog. Being thrust into Ellie's role after growing attached to her as a quasi-parent is an empathic role reversal, but we are still protecting in one form or the other. Of course, we don't know this now, and so it could be that this is Ellie making do on her own. This scene is both haunting and deliberately slow, forcing us to take in our new avatar, but we also immediately feel more nimble but vulnerable as Ellie. She is not incapable, however, and her hunting skills are some vindication of all we have taught her thus far over the course of the game. The chief conflict is introduced to the scenario as Ellie runs into 2 individuals trying to claim the prize she has hunted. David, voiced by the incredibly versatile Nolan North, seems conspicuously nice, using a conciliatory tone to see if he can barter with Ellie for the food. We infer that Joel must be alive, as she's quick to ask for medicine. Ellie's attitude here is one of apprehension, concern, and distrust, a shift in her character's demeanor after everything she has gone through. Clearly, she has imbibed some of the pragmatism Joel embodies, and it's interesting it only manifests itself when she's trying to save his life. Roles do define us in more ways than one. David is an interesting character, as his congenial facade hides a murderous and predatory intent. He is an immediate contrast to Joel's reticence and grumpiness, and in some sense, the game is using him as a foil to interrogate Joel's temperament. David sends his partner to retrieve some antibiotics, and he and Ellie camp out in a hut awaiting his return. As is par for the course, they are set upon by hordes of infected, and so they are forced into working with one another, much to Ellie's dismay. Whenever cooperation takes place in the game, especially through mechanics, we can't help but trust the entity that seemingly has our back. This sequence effectively gets us, the player, to start to trust David, just as perhaps Ellie might be. The claustrophobic nature of their standoff with death feels suitably desperate, like they are scrounging to survive as opposed to attacking the undead, and this only serves to heighten the presumed camaraderie between Ellie and David. Of course, Ellie is still skeptical, but she is not us, as the game constantly reminds us. Managing to hold out against the hordes, Ellie and David once more sit around a makeshift fire, and they get to talking about fate. This is worth listening in on.
This winter has been especially cruel. A few weeks back, I sent a group of men out a nearby town to look for food. Only a few came back. He said that the others had been slaughtered by a crazy man. And get this, he's a crazy man traveling with a little girl. You see, everything happens for a reason. Don't get upset. It's not your fault. I'm just a kid. James, lower the gun.
The brilliance of this scene cannot be emphasized enough. Not only is the threat more salient because of how understated it is, it flips our presumptions about who might be right and wrong here. We are, in some sense, blinded by our love for Ellie, and so presume she and us are in the right. David has shown no signs of being a particularly evil person at this point, so he can still be seen as a kind-hearted soul who sees Ellie as a victim of a tyrannical psychopath. Of course, that psychopath happens to be us controlling Joel for, at this point, close to 8 hours. What's also interesting here is that Naughty Dog are acknowledging the actions we have partaken in-game, which is something they were deathly against in the Uncharted franchise. There was absolutely no justification for Nathan Drake to kill thousands, and still be a lovable protagonist. This dissonance was just brushed aside, as if the gameplay and cutscenes occupied two separate universes. The breaking of this divide had me ponder exactly how many people we had killed in the university, and I couldn't even count. This recontextualization of our actions over the game comes with the subtlest of acknowledgements that our actions have been noticed. Ellie is let go, but this is only so they could track her back to Joel's and exact their revenge. This scene between Joel and Ellie is a potent reminder of the asymmetrical attachment between these two characters. Clearly, Ellie cares more for Joel than he does, at least as far as we know. Most players will have been won over by Ellie's charms at this point, in stark contrast to Joel's refusal to grow attached. This is for obvious reasons, given how Joel lost his daughter 20 years ago and has still yet to recover. This effectively conveys the pain he must be feeling, as our feelings towards Ellie compared to Joel's visible sentiments are quite at odds. Having just played a section where we risked our lives, and Ellie's, to save Joel, his prior temperament seems ever the more frustrating. Ellie desperately tries to lead her pursuers away from Joel. This next section playing as Ellie is one of the few that stealth is almost absolutely necessary. And this is a lost art in many games. The feelings of disempowerment that are elicited when you can't directly confront the enemy are leveraged here. Fear is driven by impotence and uncertainty, and surely describes the predicament Ellie finds herself in. A 2011 review in the Journal of Communication disclosed a few factors that contribute to us developing a parasocial relationship with someone. This is a case where there is a character or avatar that you have never met but feel deeply intimate with. The four most important things that contribute to this are using nonverbal cues to acknowledge the viewer, speaking directly at the viewer, being interesting and amicable, and being able to see things directly from their perspective. The potency of our attachment to Ellie comes into full focus in this scene, because the mechanics of disempowerment, the lingering threat, having to play as her, makes her an incomparably believable character. This makes Ellie's capture that much more devastating. And so the grand reveal that David's clan happens to be a bunch of cannibals. This is one of the few absolutely necessary cliches in all zombie fiction, because as a narrative device, it embodies the greatest of all evils. But in comes David, still friendly, still protective, and offering food to a caged Ellie. Once more the exchange is addressing our complicity in violence, as David throws back the accusation that he is an animal by asking Ellie, and by extension the player, how many people we have killed thus far. Ellie has also racked up an absurd kill count in the last few sections, and those people, as the game is now acknowledging, were all people. What makes cannibalism that much worse than wanton murder? When we hunt, we think it is more evil to kill an animal and not consume them, as it is a waste. Why not extend the logic to people? Of course we are more moral in this game though, right? We are trying to save Ellie, the world, and she's just so lovable. David's kind facade is revealed to be a smokescreen, in some sense, to seduce Ellie. This was obviously a very touchy subject for them to get into, especially in a medium not known for its nuance, but I'd say they handled it pretty well. Ellie plays into it at first, tries to get an advantage, but it backfires, and her insubordination brings out David's true shadow self. He was a demon masquerading as a white knight, the exact opposite of Joel. And so it is apt that we shift immediately back to Joel, given a new lease of life due to the medication Ellie procured and is now paying the price for. So it all comes into focus. The child you are protecting and whose love you are grotesquely undeserving of, who just sacrificed herself to save your life, captured at the hands of moral reprobates who have turned to cannibalism, and is about to be cut into 100 tiny little pieces by first light, needs your help. Finally, violence becomes a language of protection, love, and obligation, not indulgence, sadism, and fun. To me, Joel had yet to prove himself to us, the player, that he was deserving of Ellie, and so here was a chance for him, through us, to gain our validation. That language becomes manifestly visible in this scene in particular.
What the?
You wait here. Now, the girl. Is she alive?
What girl? I don't know no girl. Fuck!
Focus right here, right here. I'll pop your goddamn knee off. The girl.
She's alive. She's David's newest pet.
Where?
The town! The town!
Now you're gonna mark it on the map. And it better be the same exact spot your buddy points to. Mark it.
It's right there. You can verify it. Go ask him. Go on. I tell you, I ain't lying. I ain't.
Damn!
Fuck you, man. He told you what you wanted. I ain't telling you shit.
That's all right. I believe him.
No, wait!
And so in this scene, the game explicitly acknowledges in a cutscene how we have been playing through the game, destroying the illusion that we are in any way heroic once and for all. The scene shifts again, as Ellie is now being readied to be slaughtered, when she reveals she is infected. Ellie could be the key to restoring humanity, but there's no time for that. She escapes, once more, and we are back to controlling her. Other media like film and books can shift between characters at a whim, and frame the mutually escalating stakes for both characters. But book strength lies in its ability to depict internal monologues, and film can frame kinetic action and perspective. Games bring with them an interactive component, which thrusts us into people's shoes. What this framing accomplishes is to highlight how much we care for Ellie, then forces us to prove it as Joel. It is a narrative technique that allows the exploration of a relationship, not just individuals. It also adds an urgency to the pacing, which is essential in crafting the end-of-story vignettes. Time is shifting and being jolted as we approach the singularity, the character's reunion. Ellie finds herself trapped in a diner with David as he stalks her around the tables. I thought this boss fight felt real and consistent, not an abrupt suspension of the mechanics. We have to be wary of where we step, as we sneak around David to land some blows. Boss battles don't have to be empowering, especially if they don't fit the narrative context. Here, the novelty and framing is enough to make this sequence stand out, and the apprehension we feel mirrors Ellie's. Ellie desperately tries to get at a knife, but David stops her, and at this point, he is full-on psychopathic pedophilic rapist. It's somewhat of a relief that Ellie manages to deal with David on her own, in some sense subverting the whole idea that she needs Joel to protect her. The threat of rape doesn't feel like a cheap gimmick for shock value, but a way to amplify the stakes at play in a gratuitous way. It makes the glorious cacophony of blood she leaves in her wake feel great to us, the viewer. Joel enters the scene, restraining Ellie in an interesting reversal of roles. Then, this happens.
Look, it's me.
He tried to...
Oh, baby girl. It's okay. It's okay.
Joel.
It's okay.
2 words, baby girl, convey more emotion, meaning, and significance than every line of dialogue that has been uttered thus far. It is what he called his daughter, an undeniable acknowledgement of the affection he now has for Ellie. It is a culmination of all the character building, tension, insecurities, and tribulations Joel, Ellie, and us have been subjected through in the last hour and the entire game. We felt both characters' perspectives as it converged on this moment, and as such, we feel completely and undeniably a part of the proceedings. For Ellie, relief, love, hope, reprieve, support, and safety. For Joel, gratitude, attachment, protectiveness, and redemption. We literally feel all these things simultaneously, because Naughty Dog took the trouble to use interactivity not just to supplement, but to drive the core thematic conceit of the entire chapter. It's Joel and Ellie against the world. And although we think we are on board for the moment, the ending of the game brilliantly subverts this. But that's a story for another day.
You're right.
This chapter proves that there is much more that can be gleaned from the linear storytelling model many think is reaching its limits. The reason this chapter was so expertly crafted was because Naughty Dog let the story tell itself through the mechanics, and then bolstered it with their cinematic and gameplay flair. It's a bold step forward for a company defined by its separation between narrative and gameplay, to not just break the divide, but use the inherent tension to recontextualize Joel, Ellie, and our place in the narrative. Using the language of violence in an ironically more grounded way allows the dissonance to wash away, and the characters to take center stage. The director Neil Druckmann has stated that if the first Last of Us is about love, the second is about hate. I anticipate a scene similar to this, where instead of the characters coming together, they are somehow being torn apart. In any case, this level might come to define what can be accomplished within the current storytelling paradigm, and it begs the question how much more powerful these tools can get when it comes to crafting believable stories. As for right now, no one does it as well as Naughty Dog. Thanks for watching, guys. If you have any more ideas as to why this scene was so brilliant, please leave them in the comments below. And tell me what you're excited about for the new Last of Us. If you want more content like this, please be sure to subscribe. It means a lot. Thanks for watching.